Okay, hello party people. For my PowerPoint party presentation, I have selected the theme literacy in the current political situation and U.S. militarism in the Philippines. So, this is a pretty heavy topic that I think would be useful to split the two operational definitions into two slides. So, um, I split this one into three, yes, and then a question at the at the bottom. So, current political situation in the Philippines. When I was going through this slide, I was thinking, okay, current is what is happening right now. Political situation, that is a heavy, heavy definition in this case for a country, why the country is the way it is right now in terms of how its society is organized, um, and how the political situation in the Philippines is the society is organized semi-feudal, semi-colonial, and it's also geographically it is an archipelago with many islands consisting of many cultures of many different people. And for the second operational definition that will serve us in this presentation is U.S. militarism in the Philippines. So again, three definitions. Oh, I forgot to go over the first question. Why is this archipelago the way it is right now? So why is this archipelago the way it is right now? That is the first part of the theme. The second definition of the theme is U.S. militarism in the Philippines. So, United States is an imperialist country who plays a huge part in controlling the Philippine government's lines of defense, the armed forces of the Philippines. So, this is, I believe, the military of the Philippines. And we'll go over the police forces of the Philippines, which I believe is called just the Philippine National Police. Anyway, getting sidetracked. Militarism, I tried defining these things in my own words. So, nationalist military presence and defense. So, nationalist military presence and defense in the Philippines. So, we'll go over this in the next few slides. So, I believe, to be literate in militarism is to know that militarism it comes in the form of control, military control, like defense control, offense control of like the Philippine military, like the offensive, like to foreign forces and also domestic forces in the Philippine National Police. But you'll see how the military there's like how the police in the Philippines has is also militaristic in the ways it interacts with its people. Anyways, that's me defining militarism, and we're using the same definition for the Philippines, an archipelago holding a semi-feudal, semi-colonial society. So holding as in literally on the land, people. Second question, what does an imperialist country gain with holding nationalist military presence in the Philippines? What does the United States gain with militarization or militarism in the Philippines? Like, what does it gain? And so for this synthesis, I wanted to include a synthesis, like tying the two questions into tying them into one question, or at least with two questions with many parts to it. So this is supposed to represent the Asia Pacific, and SWANA countries. To be more literate in this subject is how we understand the answer to these two questions combined. Why is this archipelago the way it is right now? And what does an imperialist country gain with holding nationalist military presence in this archipelago? So, to be more literate in this subject, to understand the theme is how we understand the answers to this question. So the answers coming from this bottom part and also the following slides. So, to answer this, why is this archipelago the way there it is right now? there is rising U.S. militarism around the world. So there's these how the U.S. pops up in other countries. How the U.S. pops up in other countries, how the imperialist country pops up in other countries, and why. What do they gain from this? And how do the countries being that okay, let me reword this. Why is the US in these countries, and what do these countries affected by the US, how are they affected by it? Okay, synthesis. Why do these things exist? Like, why is this happening? And I wanted to split this into cause and effect. So these slides are these were the definitions, and these are this is just the context. I know it's not part of the presentation, and I'm supposed to do light sourcing, but because of the theme I chose, I feel like I should give it more respect, I guess, more effort, I guess. I mean, okay, let me just I wanted to give more effort other than just defining it and then how I measure it. I wanted to also give some context because it's also a historical issue as well as a current issue. And it's just a huge thing that is summed up in many, many articles and many, many books. Okay, public speaking. Okay. Why do these things exist? The cause is, as you can see, this is linked to the 2+2 conference. Well, it says here, but the cause is to deter China from claiming vast areas of the South China Sea. And when I read this, I'm like, okay, vast areas of the South China Sea, like, why are you claiming it? And why? So this highlighted, hyperlinked section is the reason why. Chinese forces have launched a campaign of harassment against the legitimate economic activities of other claimants in the area, interfering with ships and aircraft from other states looking to exercise navigational rights and freedoms under international law. So when I think of this, I'm like, okay, legitimate economic activities of other claimants in the area. I'm like, okay, that's very vague. These conferences always have this vague language. So I'm like, okay, for economic purposes. They're deterring China for economic purposes. Am I getting too deep in this? Okay. Anyways, the U.S. protecting their national interests. The economic purposes are the U.S. protecting their national interests from China within the South China Sea. So like anything within like the South China Sea. And there's another, I think it's called the Pacific Rim, where all the areas in which anyways. So deter China from claiming trade routes, protecting, they always say national interests. For example, shipping routes, ports, exporting raw materials such as fish, sugar, corn, minerals, lumber, coconut, to name a few, and selling them back to their semi-colonial, semi-feudal colonies. So it's like exporting rice from the Philippines and then importing rice from other countries, or exporting raw materials and exporting raw materials from the Philippines and importing finished products to the Philippines from the resources that they could have just used themselves. Anyways, that's a biased opinion from me. And the effect of this, to name a few, is I will read this out because I think it's important to read these things out. Why do these things exist? Cause, effect. Cause, economic purposes. Effect of achieving, the effect of the U.S. protecting their national interests is armed intimidation within the country, within the Philippines, police and military, leading to extrajudicial killings. I should have defined extrajudicial. So like without any further process, without any due process, I believe. Stifling protesters or any naysayers against the Philippine government or the US, stifling protesters' voices and subjecting them to harassment, arrest, torture, death, charter change. So I believe changing the constitution to privatization of like lands, vast amounts of lands, inflation rising, Philippines as a market for U.S. goods, going back to here. These are why these things. This is why this is the answer. This is like a very condensed answer to this, which is part of the context to these two definitions. How can you measure the literacy of, how can you measure one's literacy of the Philippine political situation and Philippine political situation and U.S. militarism in the Philippines? By how well, you can measure it by how well one understands the context behind why there are military bases in the Philippines and why the U.S. controls the Philippine Armed Forces, as well as, I believe, the Philippine National Police, joint training exercises between the Philippines and the United States, and the existence of EDCA, as well as the VFA, Visiting Forces Agreement. I could go into those, but this is getting pretty long already. How can you measure the theme? How can you measure the extent? How can you measure how much one understands the theme? The theme being the political situation and U.S. militarism in the Philippines. Essentially, the amount one, or the student, the teacher, the person, the individual, knows about the history behind U.S. influence. This could mean a lot of things. This means a lot of things in the Philippines and why it continues today. Both pertain to why the Philippines is the way it is right now and what an imperialist country gained holding nationalist military presence in this archipelago, the Filipino archipelago. Okay, what are 3 to 5 sources that help define the theme? So, there's I divided it into historical context. Obviously, this isn't the only source of historical context for the theme that exists. It's just something that I myself have included in my reality that help define the theme. These are also things that I include in my reality. Not the only thing that exists in our collective reality, but it's what exists in this PowerPoint. So this is literally a book. Source 1, Philippine Society and Revolution by Amado Guerrero. These are just a few quotes that I included. You can read a few. This is not an extensive list of quotes that pertain to the theme in this presentation. This is not a quote, it's just a note. Roxas, puppet regime, they're all puppet regimes. And this is a book. This is my copy that a kasama or friend or comrade gave to me. And this is my journal. Anyways. I wanted to do this because when you look up the book, this cover of the book does not exist, or at least in the front page. Anyways, source 2. This is a statement by Bayan USA, US out of the Philippines. And you can read these quotes. So this is pertaining to increased presence of the U.S. military, basically about military presence and why the U.S. has U.S. military presence in Asia, in the Pacific region, in the Pacific. This is from a Foreign Policy and Focus article. I could read this out because it provides more context as to the political situation in the Philippines and U.S. militarism. Ever since the Philippines attained formal independence in 1946, the U.S. has maintained a military presence on its former colony, guiding and supporting counterinsurgency operations to put down constant rebellions against an oligarchic government. Today, the Philippine armed forces overwhelmingly direct violence not against outside invaders, but at poor and marginalized people within its borders. U.S. military aid is only making internal conflict worse. Internal conflict in the Philippines. Counterinsurgency against protesters, against anyone who says anything against the Philippine government. Formal independence in 1946, it goes back to this, but this is not a Philippine society and revolution lesson. This is just what I want to be more literate in. Anyways, fourth source, an article, or no, a transcript from the U.S. Department of Defense from the Joint Statement on the Philippines, the United States, fourth 2+2 ministerial dialogue. It talks about how, the Asia Pacific, why the Department of Defense, why the U.S. military has bases, has U.S. troops, has joint training exercises, why it has all these agreements, why they have these treaties. CVFA, EDCA. If you see Filipino American protests, or just any Filipino protest led by Bayan, you can usually see junk VFA, junk EDCA. Like junk, throw it away, EDCA. Okay, last few slides. How is the current political situation? It's a pretty long thing. And U.S. militarism in the Philippines, helpful to learn. I will just read this out. Even if you are not Filipino, assessing the political situation, I don't know why this is capitalized, the political situation and military presence in the Philippines is significant because it is one example of what the U.S. prioritizes and sends its money to, what it provides financial, military aid to. I remember someone saying, it doesn't just send money, it also just sends, more tanks, more guns, more troops, more. It's not just straight up money. For example, there is frustration among the masses with the U.S. sending military aid overseas, while Americans still struggle obtaining basic needs day by day. I will attach what this line is highlighting, because I think it's by PBS, and a veteran was talking about how about his opinion on the U.S. sending military aid overseas. Obviously, there are many benefits to living in the U.S. and various circumstances as to why we are all here right now. With that said, being critical of how the U.S. affects other countries and why is one more step towards discussing or having further discussion of what we can do for progress. Understanding how our country works and why it works can help us understand why we struggle with obtaining basic needs in the first place. So being more literate in this theme can help us understand why we struggle with obtaining basic needs in the U.S. in the first place. Why should we pick this theme? Why should you care about this? Why should you care? I'm not Filipino. I'm Filipino, the voice you're speaking to, the voice you are hearing right now, but, as you, maybe you're not Filipino, maybe you're not really interested in this. Well, as students in the U.S., we should strive to be literate in the political situations in general of semi-colonial, semi-feudal societies such as the Philippines. Like, it didn't just start off as semi-colonial and semi-feudal. Such as the Philippines, which is very well associated with the U.S. due to its treasure trove of cheap labor, people who will work for cheap, for low wages, and raw materials, which we went over in the first place, like lumber, minerals, fish, food. This is the same story for many countries in the global south. It is important to strive, such as, I believe Pakistan, someone check me on this. I believe Pakistan is also semi-colonial, semi-feudal. So understanding the Philippines, you can also be like, oh, in insert global southern country is also semi-colonial, semi-feudal. I wonder how their society is also organized, what the people are fighting for, why they are fighting for it, what has been taken from them. And why should I care about this? Because it is such a prominent issue that the country I am living in is complicit in. It is important to strive for literacy of the plights of the global south because these are plights that are going on in real time, and by learning we understand, or hopefully we can try to understand, and by understanding we can try to make a difference in the world. In the world meaning not like it doesn't have to be a loudspeaker shouting to everyone in the entire world, because that's kind of what I picture when I hear in the world, like talking to people in the world. In the world meaning it can be with our personal connections, like one-on-one, one to two, our families, our friends, communities, by having conversations and deciding what to do with the momentum after the conversation cease, or after the daily conversations are over. What do we do with our time after this momentum that we have built with this discussion, learning from each other? Anyways, I hope you sincerely consider my theme for this PowerPoint party and seek to learn more about it, or not. Or not. I just hope you maybe think it's interesting. I hope you seek to learn more about it. Thank you for being here at my presentation, and have a wonderful rest of your week.